You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
This is Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We've been broadcasting from the Concierge Landscape Studios, and we're brought to you by Extreme Exteriors. It's time for a message from the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. This MHA Minute is brought to you by Pest Control Services. When you need an exterminator, you want someone reliable and effective. Give Greg Keener a call at Pest Control Services, 952-894-9748. Pest Control Services is a proud member of Angie's List and a member of the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. That's Pest Control Services, 952-894-9748. Tell Greg that Gene and Tony sent you.
Did you know that the members of the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association, or MHA, provide over a quarter of the state's housing? That's housing for more than 1 million residents. The members of MHA agree to abide by a professional code of ethics, and they know that happy residents are key to a successful business. When you're out looking for your next apartment, remember that rental references are a two-way street. Before you rent, ask if the owner is a member of MHA. If not, ask why not. And tell them to visit mmha.com. That's two M's, mmha.com. If you're an owner or manager or even an accidental landlord, you owe it to yourself to learn how the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association, its classes, certification programs, resources, staff, and faculty can help you succeed. Don't be a good landlord. Be a great one. Visit mmha.com, mmha.com.
So we've been talking, Gene, about the condo board and the $40,000 parrot.
Yep.
The lawsuit over a condo owners keeping a parrot in the building.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you wanted to discuss a little bit what might have been done differently, not only by the condo board, but also by this homeowner.
Yeah, and when you hear a story like this and you hear someone say, boy, the association spent over $40,000. Was it necessary?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it could have been. And again, maybe the members really wanted the board to do that.
Sure.
But even if they do, are there other things that you can do that would show your earnestness in taking a stand and being firm, yet without having to necessarily spend that kind of money?
$40,000. One thing at the very end of the story, it's mentioned that that the court noted that neither party had agreed to mediation, or that both parties had declined mediation.
Yes.
Is that what happened?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that. I did get a chance. I think I mentioned before we went on air to speak to Mr. Bezelinsky.
Okay.
I tried to contact the association's attorney, wasn't able to get a hold of them. Mr. Bezelinsky, of course, said, we're still going through this. So he said, I would prefer not to comment.
It's not settled yet.
It's not settled yet.
Wow.
And so he said, here's my attorney's number. And I tried calling him right before the show, but of course, enough time hasn't elapsed. So maybe he will give me a call back. But I don't know the answer to that. To that question.
But that might have been something they could have tried. They could have tried some mediation to try and work out a solution that was maybe not completely satisfactory to both sides, but at least doable.
Well, I think mediation helps if both parties are earnest in wanting to resolve something.
Sure. If
I don't know that that's the case here. Mr. Bezelinsky, I don't know that he is earnest. And again, I say that because of the big thing that we know from this article.
Right.
He lied.
Right. That's right. And you make an excellent point. Mediation is not a solution if someone in the situation doesn't give a darn. Doesn't care to find a solution. It's never going to work. You're right. Everybody involved has to want to find a solution.
This wasn't about trying to find a happy medium, because nowhere did you see Mr. Bezelinsky, for example. And so maybe this goes into what we said we were going to talk about next, and that is, what could both sides have done? If someone, instead of lying, Mr. Bezelinsky could have gone to the board and said, what is it that is obnoxious about having the bird? Is it because people can hear it? Is it because of a smell? Maybe it's none of those things. Maybe people say there's not a pet, there's a no pet policy, and we know you have a pet. there,
Sure.
let's try and find out what that is. Unless you begin to ask the question, what is it that's bothersome? You can't ever work on mediation or trying to work towards a compromise.
I was thinking of a compromise and mediation in these terms.
Mm-hmm.
There is a pet policy that says no pets are allowed.
Yeah.
So I don't see the value in trying to find out whether this pet was bothering anyone or not.
Uh-huh.
I don't think that's the question because the pet is not allowed. I see mediation as maybe being helpful if you could work out an exit strategy or a timeline for when the problem will be resolved. So sorry, Mr. Bezelinsky, you have to find another home for your pet.
But you care about the pet.
You
we
can have
understand
3
that.
months to do that, or you have to find a new home.
Yeah.
So you'll have X number of months to sell and move out.
But I'm thinking the question, I think there probably could be some value with asking the question, does it bother anybody? Because if it didn't, maybe the board would like to take a look at having a special meeting with the homeowners and to rethink the pet policy.
Okay,
maybe
that's a good point.
Maybe the pet policy would not include a bird or fish. I mean, a lot of times they don't. When people refer to a pet policy, they're referring to the four-legged animal, to mammals like cats and dogs. But so maybe there could have been something that could have been reworked there if you really were earnest in wanting to be truthful and wanting to.
Sure.
I guess you'd have to be an optimist thinking, hey, we can kind of come to a conclusion here that's going to be to everybody's best interest.
Sure. But you make an excellent point. Perhaps the condo association would like to change the pet policy.
Yeah.
Perhaps the association members are no longer interested in a very strict prohibition of pets.
Mm-hmm. And had Mr. Bezelinsky been honest and said, let's have some discussion. Let's talk about having a special meeting to talk about it. Maybe enough homeowners would come forward and say, you know what, I think there is a place to make these exceptions and to change the policy to allow this to happen. Now the board can move forward, still being consistent, saying we've consistently addressed the rules and regulations and been fair to everybody. But now because the majority of the homeowners have weighed in and want to make this change, we can now do this, and allows everybody to save face. No, guess what? No legal fees are used whatsoever in that kind of situation.
Yep, that's absolutely right.
And so, to me, it just seems like the big issue was Mr. Bezelinsky lied, and when you do that, you lose all kinds of credibility.
You certainly lose the high ground, don't you?
Yeah.
You don't really have a valid argument after that, I don't think.
Oh, exactly. And, and then, for the association, what could they have done? Maybe they did do this, and we talked about this, already. And that is, before you start spending $40-some thousand in legal fees, because you got to believe that's going to take a bite. Nobody has that kind of extra money in their association's bank account.
That's right. And it's affecting everyone.
It's a nonprofit. That's a special assessment waiting to happen.
Yay.
Yes. And so unfortunately, we see this with other cases where the board says, well, this is wrong. And so they want to push it to the nth degree because that'll show them.
Yeah.
And they don't realize just because you have the authority to make those expenditures doesn't mean that you should, because it's not wise.
That's true in rental housing as well. Landlords who are just, fed up with behavior of their tenants and they just want to get them out, then they want to spend the filing fee and the cost to evict in court. You have to balance that against the likelihood of succeeding in court. You have to balance it against how much longer do they have on the lease. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can take into consideration that will mitigate your own loss in that situation.
And that's probably a good reason why a number of people take a look at having their property professionally managed.
Yeah,
because you have that third party that is at arm's length.
Right.
From being the principal or the owner, and so they can take a look at things hopefully more dispassionately
good point.
than the owner themselves. Mm-hmm. That's the tough thing. And so, folks, if you're dealing with an issue, probably one last thing here before we leave this story. Maybe it's okay to just take a time where both sides would offer a moratorium. We understand that so-and-so's got a parrot or is doing something against the rules and regulations. We're going to allow it to happen during this time while we do some fact seeking.
Sure.
And
some solution seeking as well.
Yeah. And getting information from other homeowners.
What a great idea.
Yeah. Well, hey, another great idea is not to leave us, because we've got a whole nother hour of Where You Live with Gene and Tony, but we're going to take a break right now, and we'll see you back here in just a few.
How sweet it is to be loved by